the way, we mentioned our friend George Moscone. Moscone loved to tell people what they wanted to hear. So on the trip, he told Zenovich, "I'm voting for you for pro tem." Came back, he voted for Mills. He told me, "Haliva, you're out of work because Caribbeans turned out. Don't worry, you're working for me as the next mayor of San Francisco." Not the way it worked out. I would be interested in your theory. Is we know Dan White was mentally ill, but did Dan White believe that Moscone promised him reappointment, and did that factor into the assassination?
I think you are absolutely correct. I think that Moscone may very well have had something that made Dan White believe that Moscone was a team player, even when some individual on the team had done their best to eliminate him, because Dan White had done his best as a supervisor. At that time, he had managed to apparently get a contract to sell baked potatoes at Pier 39 or someplace.
Oh, really?
Because people didn't get paid anything for holding public office in those days. You really did have to work, and Moscone had to work, and Dan White had to work.
Right.
And Dan White made the mistake of deciding he didn't want anything to do with elected officials. He had been both a cop and a firefighter.
Right.
And he lived out in Visitation Valley area of our city, long away from Moscone. Moscone had been the star guy in San Francisco. He'd been the top basketball player as a high schooler. He had been at SI, which is where the Catholics were. He was the son of a sole mother, one child, him, no sisters, no brothers, none of the above. And he was super popular. And in that category, there was no question that when the election occurred, that elected him, same time Dan White got elected Board of Supervisors. And White resented Moscone in every way. He did not, and he literally went out of his way to offend Moscone if he could. Yet he thought resigning was what he needed to do to go try to make a living.
Yep. I actually, I love George. I thought George had a great personality. And to me, it bothers me that tragedy is only recognized today by Harvey Milk's death. I mean, he assassinated two people, but I believe that in classrooms, well, of course, California classrooms have changed, but nobody knows who Moscone was outside of San Francisco. And I just wish there was more recognition of George, because I think he did a lot for the city. Not as much as you, arguably more than Diane, but I think it's sad.
The assassination of George Moscone is almost a forgotten incident, so to speak, because yes, this town evolved into a guy who was not even a participant in the decision making in the city, but that guy had insulted Dan White because Dan White hated gays.
Right.
And I think that when Milk literally catered and gave attention to Dan White, it created a confusion in Dan White's life that resulted in Dan White totally and completely flipping out. Yeah. And when he concluded that he had been tricked into whatever he was doing by a person and entity that he hated, all of people who were gay or lesbians. He literally committed to take out the two that presented a problem for him. Moscone, whom he could not match under any set of circumstances, and Milk, whom he believed had misled him into believing that Milk cared about him. And the results were that, but his list, by the way, was not just the two. His list had 10 people on it.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
I was one of the 10.
Wow.
I was one of the 10 on the assassinated, to be assassinated list. And he went from his assassinating Milk up a block to a place where you normally would eat on Golden Gate Avenue, and the Doggy Diner. And that's where his friend and buddy, who had served in the police department with him, found him, went up and sat down with him, and they had a long talk. The list didn't come out, however, until the trial. When the trial of Day and White, that list was published. We never knew it at the time.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank God it didn't go beyond the tragedy of Moscone and Milk.